People who were the crazy ex. What's the worst thing you have done? I was so hurt and upset by how he cheated on me, broke up with me on our anniversary, even though he had known for months that he was going to end it, and still led me to believe we would be celebrating. I was furious and watched my then dreams crash before me. So I flipped. I begged, cried, pleaded, and contacted him constantly to get back together. I promised him I would do everything that I had previously refused. I was pathetic. It is embarrassing. The worst part is that I went so far as to fake a pregnancy just to scare him and, in my twisted mind, punish him. It was immature, childish, ridiculous, and utterly inappropriate. Little did I know, he was still seeing her, and he is now married to her. No matter how badly he treated me, I cannot justify my outrageous actions. Luckily, I have learned a lot, and I would never make those mistakes again. Story 2, I am not a crazy ex, but I have definitely done some questionable things. Boys mess around, girls mess with you. I was not dating this guy. He had been a friend for a few years. We decided to sleep with each other for about a 2-week period before he returned to where he lives. Long story short, he started telling mutual friends that I had gotten weird and clingy and wanted him to be my boyfriend. This was not true. I was just really disappointed that an expression of trust and friendship, in a strange way I suppose, ended up ruining our friendship. About a year after the whole ordeal, we had both moved on and were at a holiday celebration at a mutual friend's house along with a bunch of other friends of mine. He brought his new girlfriend. She was a really nice girl and very pretty. I, also in a happy new relationship, was genuinely happy for him. Throughout the night, he kept doing shady little things and throwing subtle jabs at me. For example, he deliberately sat next to me while isolating his girlfriend farther down the table, just so he could make a big deal about how I was being difficult for not wanting to relocate to Siberia so his girlfriend could sit with him and my friends. So, what's a girl to do? Later, I was outside with his girlfriend alone, smoking a cigarette. I did not expect her to know that I had slept with her boyfriend, and I realized there were 2 ways I could handle it. I decided to tell her what a nice guy her boyfriend was, how loyal he was, and to be friendly with her. I am good at getting other girls to like me, so we got along extremely well, and she wanted to become my new best friend. I decided that the best way to be a crazy, vindictive bitch was to be excessively nice to his girlfriend. When she left, she gave me a huge hug and said she would love to hang out again, while he made a point of hugging everyone else goodbye except me. That way, when he tried to talk about what a bitch I was for not letting him sit next to her, she would defend me, saying I was very nice, cool, and spoke highly of him. In the end, he just made himself look like the nasty little jerk he is. Story 3. I was a crazy ex. I was dating this girl. Coming into it, she had an open relationship with a guy who lived out of state. We were just bang buddies at first, and then we started developing feelings. Cue the usual story. She began debating breaking up with him to be with just me. At the time, I wasn't okay with open relationships. Give me a break. It was college, and I was dumb. And eventually she did. I cannot stress enough. You should never date someone who broke up with someone else to be with you. That is a lesson I have tried to drill into my little brother, his friends, and anyone else who will listen. The trust isn't there because the precedent is one of being untrustworthy. Anyway, things went pretty okay for a while. But the jealousy hit me. Why was he still calling her? Was I just another part of an open relationship without knowing it? Did she actually love me? Another lesson, kids. Don't use the L word in college, it's dumb. Or was I just a distraction? I went nuts. I crossed a line when she left her live journal, dating myself here, open on my computer. I read it, private entries and all. Whole conversations between them, with him bad-mouthing me and her openly wondering if she should break up with me and get back with him. I know I crossed a line, but at this point, I was so insecure and jealous that I flipped out, massively. I confronted her, they cut off contact, and things proceeded. Mind you, I was always suspicious, and having gone full jealous a-hole mode once already, I basically couldn't get out of it. I became a suspicious, awful jerk. But even with all that, I still had that whole, dude, I love her thing going on and was determined to make it work. Just, by controlling her and being a jealous a-hole. So, as it tends to, this behavior on my part drove her to lash back at me. Lots of fights, lots of crying, lots of makeup banging. Being young and stupid, I chalked all of it up to emotional investment and hard times to overcome so that we could finally be happy. She got jealous in return. We fought some more. She went through my phone. I went through hers. The whole 9 yards of bad relationship Vietnam. Really terribly awful stuff. I caught her doing the same emotional cheating, her term, not mine, a couple more times. She caught me at it as well. We turned the entire relationship into an awful death grip of bad behavior. As eventually happens in situations like these, one of us was bound to cheat on the other. It was her, though not for lack of trying on my part. I had bought the ring and was going to make the insane leap, and she left me a week before I planned to propose. She had been sleeping with my best friend at the time, yeah, some friend, right? For about 6 months. I went ballistic, even though I was miserable in the relationship, even though I was just as fed up and pissed off as she was, even though everything was completely and utterly awful. None of that mattered. I exploded, got rip-roaring drunk, called her every slut-shaming and awful name I could think of, punched him in the face, and basically had a complete and total meltdown. It was terrible. The thing is, even though I was miserable, I was still pissed off. I kept trying to make things work and holding out hope that they would get better. It wasn't until later that I realized who I had become and where I had gone emotionally in that mess. Looking back now, I hate who and what I became there. We brought out the absolute worst in each other, and the breakup was no different. The thing about crazy exes is exactly like the sinners in Dante's vision of hell. It's not that they are hateful, terrible people or somehow not normal like everyone else. It's excessive or flawed love. I didn't think I was being crazy. I didn't think I was even being unreasonable. I just thought I was trying to keep us together because, damn it, we were happy, when we clearly weren't. It's hell, and anyone can go there with the right push or the wrong situation. Everyone. So go easy on the crazy exes of the world. They aren't fully in control, I'd say. Sometimes we just snap. As it stands, I'm a lot better now. I'm in a normal, healthy relationship that makes that old one look like a nightmarish fever dream of the worst kind. I'm over her. I found myself, and I'm looking to get married soon. No more jealousy issues. At least, nothing anywhere near the scale of what I was. No more manipulation. None of it. Honestly, I think I became a better person because I went through it. It showed me how bad I could get and exactly how not to be in a relationship. I learned the wrong way so I could do things right. What's really messed up is that she still shows up in my dreams sometimes, and it throws me off for a day. It's like I got some kind of emotional shell shock from the whole thing. As bad as it was, and as awful as it was, part of me never fully left. That worries me, but in the end, they're just bad dreams. Story 4. Oh, showing up at his place, refusing to leave, simply hovering and waiting for his attention, complaining when he didn't treat me the way I wanted, texting constantly, sinking into deep depression and freaking out when I found out he had moved on to other girls. I don't think I knew how to cope with rejection, or with genuine a-holes for that matter. He treated me poorly during the relationship, and I guess I was afraid to let go of that attention, even though it was shitty attention. On top of that, I was still dealing with a breakup from nearly a year earlier. So, I think it was a lot of insecurity and irrational fear. Luckily, I learned from it. I still hate the way I acted. Who knew crazy and insanely low self-respect went so well together? Story 5. Long story short, I became convinced my wife was cheating on me, so I started going through phone records and bank statements. I found things that were out of the ordinary. I felt completely embarrassed and ashamed for doing it. When I confronted her, she blew up and called me a stalker. 2 days later, she told me she wanted a divorce and asked me to leave the house. So I did. I left everything I owned, except my clothes and this computer. The next day, she started having her new boyfriend stay over. Now, he's living in my house, sleeping in my bed, playing my consoles on my 65-inch flat screen, and driving my $40,000 Jeep. Did I mention he's a cop? Did I mention he had her file an order of protection against me too? But sure, I'm the crazy one. Edit. All of this has happened within the last 10 days. Story 6. I suppose I could be labeled a crazy ex, but I like to think I was just confused, not crazy. Unfortunately, I was in my mid-20s when I met this guy. The initial connection was intense, and we moved way too fast. He moved in with me after just 3 months. I didn't necessarily think he was the one, but I was intensely in love with him. It was strange because in just one day, he moved out after living with me for a month. I came home and his things were packed. No explanation, no reason, just, I can't be with you right now. I want to be, but I need some space. I suppose the craziness ensued at that point. He still had all his mail delivered to my house. We texted occasionally, but for the most part, I tried to leave him alone and waited. I had to beg him to move his things out of my house. He thought it was perfectly acceptable to treat me like a storage unit and told me I was being insane and a bitch because I wanted his stuff gone. But I still loved him, and like he asked, I waited. We promised we wouldn't see other people because he just needed time to come to grips with life. About 3 months later, I got a package on my doorstep. I opened it without realizing it was addressed to him. Inside was a small box of trinkets from his new girlfriend, covered in I love yous. I kind of flipped out and texted him with the customary, "What the heck?" He completely blew me off and told me I was insane for opening his mail, insisting he would press charges, because only crazy people open other people's mail. Meanwhile, I had an entire kitchen drawer stuffed with his unopened mail. So I did what any normal person would do. I sold the rest of his things on Craigslist and threw out whatever was left. Later, I found out he had been seeing that girl the entire time, and I had just been the back burner option in case it didn't work out. He also told people we both knew that I had cheated on him, opened all his mail to keep tabs on him, and was desperate, a stalker, and a psycho, simply because he moved on and I didn't. Story 7. I was the crazy one for a while, after one 3.5-year relationship full of guilt tripping, gaslighting, my partner acting entitled to my body, and other crazy-making behaviors. That was my partner, not me. I was pretty emotionally messed up. We were living far from my hometown, but went back for a visit. Well, it was supposed to be a visit, but we ended up staying. We couldn't afford a place, so she stayed with a friend, and I stayed with my mom. Funny thing, once I didn't have to be around her all the time, I realized I really did not want to deal with her crap. We were broken up within about a week or two. But we still had to make a roughly 30-hour drive together, so I could get the things I'd left behind, and so she could get home. And I was in another relationship before we even left, about 2 weeks after breaking up with the guilt tripper. That relationship was all right compared to what I'd experienced before, including about 10 relationships through high school, most of which did not involve any crazy-making at all. We were fairly clingy. I was staying over at his place just about every night almost immediately. But after a year, I started to realize that his sense of entitlement to my body, though I had experienced it in every relationship I'd had, was not okay. I think the final straw was this. We were lying in bed in spoon position, and he started touching me, running his hands along my body. He did that often, and it had been fine, but I started to curl in on myself, and he didn't take the hint. I didn't know how to be direct then. Finally, he ran his hand up my side and tapped the inside of my elbow like, "Hey, open up." I leapt out of bed, made as clear as I was capable that that was not okay, and left. Shortly thereafter, we broke up. I still didn't really understand the entitlement thing. By this point, I couldn't stand to be alone, so as soon as the next one came along, I was all in, about 3 weeks after the last one, and I could not stand to be away from him. I think his relative disinterest, combined with my pre-existing terror of being alone, did me in. I was incapable of resisting being around him. I would drop everything on a moment's notice when he called. There were a number of fights because he, rightly, needed space, but instead of actually telling me about it, which honestly, probably wouldn't have worked, he just ignored me. Of course, that drove me even crazier, but he was messed up in a different way. Months after the relationship ended, I looked up the criteria for sociopathy, and all but one of them fit him to a T. The only one that didn't was smoothness, which I expect would come with experience. He was only 20, maybe 19. I was 24. Suffice it to say, the breakup was messy. He slept with another girl less than a week after we ended things. We got back together, and he told me. I remember sitting on the futon with him, thinking that if I had just listened to the little voice in the back of my mind, warning me, I would regret this. All of it could have been avoided. I realized then that I was the one causing my own pain by letting him keep hurting me and staying in contact with him. I needed to start listening to that voice. I said as much, told him it was up to me to end this, and I got up and left. He chased after me, thinking I meant I was going to kill myself. I had already hit rock bottom and decided to change, but that moment drove the point home. I was so needy, so unbalanced, so not my own person, so lost that he genuinely believed I might take my life over him. If I had not already decided to change, that would have been the moment. I benched myself from dating for a year and focused on recognizing the red flags I had seen and ignored in the past, building myself up to walk away from anyone who showed even the slightest hint of the behaviors that had hurt me before. But 6 months in, I met another guy after transferring from the community college I had been attending to a 4-year school. I carefully stayed out of a relationship with him. He was the type to ease into a relationship gradually rather than directly asking a girl out. He had been a bit of a nice guy in high school, but he wasn't spineless or misogynistic, and he didn't put women on a pedestal like some do. By the end of the semester, with 4 months left of my not dating year, we were holding hands, spending more time together, and doing all the pre-relationship stuff, though I still tried to keep him at arm's length. I went home for Christmas break, and we talked constantly on IM. The day I returned to school, we spent the entire day together, and I finally decided it was ridiculous to pretend we were still just friends. He seemed like a good person. I saw no red flags, and I wasn't feeling the desperation I had in my last relationship. So I kissed him. The first 2 months were rough for me. It was a great relationship, and I was terrified. Where were the flags? I worried constantly. I forced myself not to see him every day. I knew that if this one went like the last few, I would have to stop dating altogether because I couldn't handle another breakup, and then it happened. He stood me up. He was supposed to pick me up at school, and he didn't show. After about half an hour, I took the bus home. I remember sitting with my 3 roommates at the kitchen table preparing to dump him. If he didn't grovel, I was done. He called as soon as he got the message at home. He didn't have a cell phone at the time, and said he was coming over. When he arrived, he didn't grovel. I don't think I would have respected him if he had, but he apologized profusely, promised it wouldn't happen again, and didn't try to blame me or deflect in any way like my exes had. He took full responsibility. I think that knowing I would have dumped him and seeing that he took full responsibility for his actions, something I don't think any of my exes had ever done, was enough. After that, my worries evaporated. Gradually, I came to see that all of the things that have always been most important to me, respect and trust in relationships, objectivity, and the scientific method, letting go of ideas when you see they are wrong, being a good person, are also most important to him. These are things so fundamental to my nature that I couldn't even name them until I saw them reflected in him. He is patient and gentle in bed. He never acts as though he has a right to my body or shows disappointment or negativity when I want to stop. He never touches me in ways I don't want to be touched. Because of this, my issues from previous relationships have mostly faded. In response, I work to overcome my naturally low libido so that we can have a fulfilling, intimate life. We've been together for 7.5 years, married for just over 3, and we have an adorable daughter who will turn 2 in September. He just landed an amazing job, and we're watching all of our dreams gently fall into place. We communicate effectively and compromise easily. We trust, respect, and love each other. It's the best relationship I've ever seen, let alone been in. Story 8. Yes, I have been the crazy ex. Many times, actually. Most of the time, it boiled down to what so many others have described. When you're young, bargaining often feels like the only option, so you try everything you can to stop a breakup from happening. It never works, but it's a natural impulse to try to prevent something hurtful. One time, though, I went legitimately crazy. Not just the regular kind of breakup crazy. I have been prone to depression and anxiety since around age 12, and this breakup happened in my late teens before I started receiving medical treatment for my mental health. It had already been a rough year. 2 of my friends had suddenly passed away within about a month of each other, one in a car crash and the other by self-harm. I was keeping things more or less together and was feeling good about dating this guy. I really liked him and ended up losing my virginity to him, a big deal for me since I had waited to try to find the right guy. The day after I lost my virginity, he called to tell me he'd been cheating on me with 2 of our mutual acquaintances the entire time we were together. For reasons I still don't fully understand, I tried to hold things together for a few days, but he quickly started ignoring me and the relationship fell apart. That breakup pushed me over the edge and triggered a major depressive episode. At first, I did the usual crazy ex thing, sending long emotional texts and calling constantly, desperate to undo something that was already done. but it got worse fast. I started having depressive thoughts, and instead of reaching out to anyone safe, I went straight to him for help every time. The lowest point was when I let myself into his apartment while no one was home. They never locked their door, and climbed into his bed. I texted him to tell him exactly where I was and what I was going to do while on his bed. I only stopped because he replied saying he was calling the police. Like I said, that was my rock bottom. Thankfully, after a few weeks of spiraling, I finally admitted to my best friend that I was depressive and harmful thoughts. She and my parents stepped in and got me the help I desperately needed. I spent a few days in a psych ward, started antidepressants, and got into consistent treatment. It's been almost 5 years since that particular Crazy Ex episode, and I'm glad to say I've grown into a stable adult who can handle relationships and breakups without falling apart. My last breakup definitely involved crying and a few emotional texts, but nothing even close to what I put myself and others through back then. My ex and I are actually still friends. The funniest part of all of this? The ex I completely lost it over. The one who had every right to cut me out of his life forever and could have filed a restraining order if he'd wanted to, still reaches out every now and then trying to hook up. I genuinely don't understand the logic there. Story 9. I had an ex-girlfriend tell all our mutual friends that I had beaten her and that I was emotionally and physically abusive when she broke up with me. She neglected to mention that I had punched a hole in the bathroom wall 2 rooms away from her after she told me she had just cheated on me with one of my good friends. So I definitely appeared to be the crazy ex-boyfriend. Many women avoided me for that reason without ever hearing my side of the story. She kept most of our friends on her side, unfortunately, which allowed her to spin the breakup in her favor and make herself look very good. It was a dark, lonely couple of years. Having 2 of your best friends destroy your ability to trust people will do that. Story 10. I drove 60 miles to his house after we broke up to return a heart-shaped pillow he had given me for Christmas because I could not hug it anymore without thinking of him. He would not let me in, refused to come outside, and said that if I did not leave immediately, he would call the police. I left the pillow on the doorstep and simply walked away. He sounded as though he truly believed I was going to harm everyone in the house. People have told me that driving that far to deliver one thing was crazy. Maybe it was. I have been told I probably have Asperger's, but my intentions were innocent. I enjoyed the drive, and I wanted to say goodbye in person. I just wanted closure so I could move on. After that, I realized I did not deserve to be treated like someone who would hurt anyone, especially after what was supposed to be a loving and trusting relationship. Oddly enough, it lifted my depression for months, and I stopped having any interest in him. Story 11. I suppose I did it somewhat intentionally. I have never been a one-night stand kind of guy. I have always been in relationships. After a long and painful breakup, I found myself drawn to a woman who reminded me of my ex. In my mind, getting someone drunk or using anything coercive was clearly unethical, but relying on my own words and charm was not. She turned out to be more of a good girl, from an Orthodox Catholic family, and she had only had one boyfriend by the time she was 26. In other words, she was not going to be easy to connect with, and that challenge only intensified my attraction and interest in her. In the end, it all took much longer than I expected. I met her, and her intense parents, and began to couple down, as my friends called it. Eventually, I got what I had been wanting, and we ended up having great, wild time again and again. But by then, I felt cornered. I had been too subtle about my real intentions, and simply walking away felt dishonest. So I stayed for close to 6 months, looking for an exit the entire time. I knew I did not want a relationship with her or with her family, but she grew increasingly attached. Later, I found out she had a bit of a gold digger streak, and that her less well-off family had played a strong role in encouraging her not to let the nice engineer slip away. Eventually, once everything became clear, I felt I had only 2 choices: break her heart outright or invent a flaw that would push her away. I chose the latter, the coward's route. I had always been a somewhat jealous partner, so I consciously exaggerated that trait. I pretended to check her phone, though I never actually violated her privacy, acted jealous and immature when she went out drinking with coworkers, and generally made it obvious, without saying it directly, that I would not handle any male attention toward her. It still did not work. I felt awful about all of it, about making her cry, about giving her false hope that I might help lift her family out of poverty someday, about letting her believe her feelings were fully reciprocated. And maybe, in some small way, they were. Eventually, I lost sight of who I was. I slipped deeper into the persona I had created, started behaving more and more poorly, and my own ethical self-checks grew weaker as the situation unraveled. My belief that dishonesty was somehow the nobler or more ethical choice because it would shield her from a painful truth became harder to justify with every passing day that I kept the lie going. In the end, I broke it off clean by staging, at least I tell myself it was staged, a public situation I knew would escalate into a heated conflict. After she stormed out of the bar just as I expected, I never spoke to her again. No calls, no texts, nothing. When our paths crossed afterward, we were strangers. I feel terrible about the entire thing, but I learned a lot about myself and I definitely learned my lesson. Manipulating people in order to get in their pants requires a complete vacation of morality and an embrace of deviancy to an extent with which I am not comfortable. Story 12. I consider myself pretty sane and reasonable. However, some people have the ability to bring out the terrible and ugly in you. I had an ex who was a habitual, over-the-line stepper, chatting up girls in front of me and getting their numbers because they were from Europe as he was, calling my cell nonstop when we fought, crying hysterically when I wouldn't return his calls, spitting in my face, and throwing my personal belongings around the apartment. It was incredibly hard to deal with because I loved him so much, and at the time, his redeeming qualities seemed to outweigh those nasty outbursts. He definitely brought out the worst in me because he escalated everything so far. Before I finally got out, I ended up with a domestic violence charge, though thankfully it was thrown out. Remember, kids, do not let crazy stick his dong in you. Story 13. I had a boyfriend who had a history of crazy exes. Many girls had stalked him or sought revenge after he broke up with them, and he was baffled by it. When he told me about this, I took it as a warning, since he was the only consistent factor in all those bad breakups. After we had been together for about a year, I had gotten to know him well enough and heard enough about his exes that I formed a theory. He was a bad breaker-upper. Not in a Seinfeld way, but he had a way of ending relationships that could make most women go a little psycho. The first reason was that he was a very open, loving, and devoted partner. He had a way of making you feel like the most beautiful, interesting, and lovable person he had ever met. Not in a kiss-ass way, but with genuine warmth. The second reason was that once he decided the relationship was not working, his feelings turned off like a switch. He would simply become cold. It was nothing personal. He just moved on and wished you the best, but he no longer felt anything for you. That abrupt 180 is what drove every girlfriend crazy. It made no sense to them, so they spiraled, trying to get some reaction that showed even a trace of the love he had for them before his sudden indifference. They showed up screaming at his door in the middle of the night, lurked by his office, and spread rumors at his job. He still ignored them. I explained my theory to him, and he agreed that I had hit the nail on the head. I could only hope that he would not do the same to me. But after a year and a half of living together, he went on a business trip and fell out of love with me. He did not cheat. We did not fight. He just lost interest. Nothing has ever ripped my heart apart like that, before or since. I might have gone psycho on him, except that I had always known he might do that to me, and I knew it was futile. He felt nothing for me, and there was no point in trying to get an emotional response from someone who does not care. So I left peacefully. I felt nothing but sympathy for all his crazy exes who came before me. Story 14. I dated my hometown boyfriend on and off for 7 years. There were times it was very off, but you will see that if you keep reading. We started dating in the 7th and 8th grades. All of my friends thought he was weird and creepy, but the more they antagonized me about him, the more I loved him. He was a friend of my cousin, and even he admitted he was a little off. As middle schoolers, we were on and off a lot, about a month together, then 3 or 4 months apart. He would find another girlfriend, but as soon as he got bored with her, he would start messaging me on AEM, and within a week, we would be back together. But he would also find someone else quickly and cheat on me with them. I can distinctly remember 3 of the girls, but there were definitely more. Looking back, I suppose I was his rebound girl. I did date other guys too, so it was not like I was solely focused on him, though I always left my boyfriends for him again at the drop of a hat. Anyway, this went on until Christmas of my sophomore year and his junior year of high school. For over a year and a half, we were inseparable. He lived only a block away in our small town, so when he was not at band practice and I was not at drill team practice, we barely left each other's side. My family hated him and his family, and I did not care. Our mutual friends were pulling away from us because he was so creepy, and I was blind to it. I tried to see his photographs as art. They were not. I must have been under some kind of love spell. He promised me things were different between us now, that he would never stop loving me, that we would get married the minute we graduated from college. He even got my V card with those promises. But of course, none of that happened, or I would not be writing this here. So, we carried on in this bliss. My hometown boyfriend graduated and was accepted into a college a couple of hours away. We vowed to talk every day and see each other when we could until I graduated and joined him. But as the summer progressed, I felt him pulling away, the same way he had before when I was his continuous rebound. There was a girl who kept calling him, but I refused to see this as a repeat of the past. At the end of the summer, we said our tearful goodbye, and he left. Within a week, he broke up with me via text message. He had broken up with me over AM all the previous times. He said we had grown apart and that I was just a child in high school. I was distraught. A short time later, I found out he was dating the girl who had been talking to him all summer. She was 5 years older than him, lived only 45 minutes from his college, and looked exactly like me, plus about 30 pounds. I saw pictures and it was extremely unnerving, especially when she smiled. Because she looked so much like me but was heavier, I started to believe it. Had to be something inside me. Something about my personality or outlook on life that had driven the love of my life away. I spiraled into a deep depression. For about 6 months, I called him right after school until I had to go to practice or go to sleep, crying and begging him to take me back, promising I could change and be whoever he wanted me to be. I would replay the night's events with my friends at school, searching for guidance. Somehow, they were still my friends afterward, and to this day, I am grateful that it didn't ruin our friendships. Finally, he breaks up with her. He calls me, saying he was so wrong to have left me, that I'm his only one, and I immediately go to his college to see him. We spend the weekend together, and it feels like we were never apart. But within the next week or so, he meets a skinny ginger girl, and within the year, they are engaged. Up until the end of my senior year, I am just as broken up over him as I was before I saw him. So I go to college far away from him. But since I've been emotionally scarred into thinking something is horribly wrong with me, I become a complete recluse, get heavily into drugs, and stay in my dorm room. Granted, I was a non-conventional girl at a school where 85% of the population is Greek, but that's another story. By April, there is no hope for me to stay enrolled because my grades are so bad. Then, like magic, the skinny ginger girl dumps her hometown boyfriend. She aims me, of course, explaining what happened and how remorseful she is for wanting to marry her, calling her crazy and saying he wants me back. I make him work for it a little, but by the time I'm packing my bags to go home, we are together, without my mom knowing. He has since switched to another school and I transfer to it. I had given up the harder drugs I used during my freshman year and only smoked pot and drank. But since he is, for this whole time, a hardcore Christian, he couldn't be with someone who did these things. We could, however, have as much out-of-wedlock banging as he wanted. So, for most of my sophomore year, I went to school, slept with him, and stayed depressed. Then, I met my current boyfriend. By this point, I was essentially just using my hometown boyfriend for physical intimacy. I didn't love him anymore because he hated who I had become, and I had to hide the real me from him. But I guess I was so used to being treated poorly that I just accepted it. But when I met my current guy, I let my hometown boyfriend fade into the distance for about a month. He doesn't call me at all during this time, but of course, he eventually starts, and I ignore the calls until he leaves this harrowing message about how he can't believe I'm ignoring him and how mean I'm being. So, without my current guy knowing, he knows now, of course, I go see him. He asks where I've been, and I tell him that I've found someone new. Someone sweet who loves me for who I am inside and smokes with me. That's when he drops the crazy bomb. He starts spewing about how much he loves me, how it's his fault for not making me feel his love, and that I should leave my current guy so he could make things right. I don't even know how I left, but I did. And then I went and took a really nice, relaxing afternoon nap with my guy. Besides recalling all of this and talking trash about me to our mutual friends, Hometown leaves me alone for about 4 months before asking me to get lunch with him. This is when I tell my guy about him, and that I just want to make sure I didn't leave Hometown in a big old pool of depression like he left me. Somewhere inside myself, I just can't handle putting someone through the same suffering. My guy understands my point because he's amazing and loves who I am, faults included. So I go. Hometown has gained 30 pounds, lost a noticeable amount of hairline, and is dressed terribly. He tells me the same things he told me the last time I saw him. And then he says he can forgive me for leaving. Any good intentions I had for the visit fly out the window at that. I tell him that I'm completely in love and happier than I've been in years, and then I leave. Hometown boyfriend and I are cordial now. I've had a drink and caught up with him, but not very often. He seems so lonely, and I am so happy. I felt a little bad for him. I went to the bar with him once, and it was fine, but the second time, he put his hand on my leg. By the third time, I told him my guy was coming, and suddenly, he was busy. He still hasn't had a girlfriend since me, and I'm living with my guy. It's been over 4 years. My new guy is perfect. He gets my crazy even when I purple bro out on him, sans the violence. I still sometimes feel like I'm too messed up for anyone to love, but he always knows what to say and do to make me feel better. I've literally never been happier. Also, as a side note, Hometown never, not once, not even close, made me reach the finish line from any act. My guy now? It's at least once and always while we're doing it. Sigh. I don't know if that was completely on topic, but my chest feels considerably lighter now. Thanks. Anonymity of the internet. Story 15. It's hard to believe I once considered myself crazy, but a year later, I can see it. My previous ex was emotionally detached from those who loved him most. Sometimes I would see him just because he barely texted me and was slow to respond to emails due to his lazy nature. I felt I had to take the initiative to see him in person because he never made the effort to see me unless I was sick. He never shared anything personal or about his life and preferred to talk to his best friend, who was a very clingy ex-girlfriend. She and I never officially met until a year into our relationship, and even then, it was awkward. He spent the night at her family home or her apartment all the time, and it drove me up the wall. I told him on multiple occasions how I felt, but I tolerated their relationship despite how inappropriate it was. I didn't want to be that girlfriend, so insecure over something like this. And he eventually told me I just had to deal with it. The worst part was that I ended up feeling incredibly insecure, and my ex would constantly remind me of it. If I ever questioned him about this friendship, he would get defensive and tell me that if I didn't like it, I should just leave. Sometimes, he would leave for the weekend without telling me, going out of state with this girl, even though nothing happened, and he still knew how I felt about the situation. It drove me crazy when she invited herself on a spring break trip with him to visit his family, and I wasn't even considered. By that point, his entire family, after just a couple of months of dating, didn't even know I existed because he never thought about me. I cried almost every day because of how much it hurt. I wish I had said something at the beginning rather than waiting until the very end, crying my eyes out over the phone. I had never seen myself as the jealous type until that relationship. Every time I think about it, I constantly wonder if I was the crazy girlfriend. Maybe I was, but it feels unfair given the circumstances. The worst part? After we broke up, he was even more insecure than I had been. Even to this day, he visits my house because we share the same friends. I used to feel sad about this, especially because it was insulting to see him coming to my house to visit my roommates, when in previous years I was forced to see him because he didn't like being at my place, claiming it wasn't worthwhile or that there were no parties happening. I act very civil and even extremely warm to him now, but I no longer harbor any feelings toward him. Rather than being passive-aggressive, I let the situation go, at least in front of him. I'm in a much better relationship now, and I feel that I'm not as crazy as I originally thought I was. My relationship with my ex made me act the way I did, but I could have handled the situation better too. It was my first relationship, and I've learned a lot from it. Sometimes we act irrationally because we care so much for someone, but it comes down to whether that person's feelings are at the same level as yours, which clearly my exes were not. Story 16. I dated a douche nozzle for about 2 months and he turned me into the crazy girlfriend ex. It started off hot and heavy. He proclaimed that he loved me after just 2 weeks of dating. He would spend the whole weekend at my place and insisted on seeing me at least 3 other times during the week, even though I was working full-time and attending school full-time. Then it just stopped. He would claim to be sick for the weekend. I would show up at his apartment with some chicken noodle soup, only for his roommates to tell me he was too unwell to get up and that I shouldn't come in so I wouldn't get sick either, when in reality he was out at parties. He would make sure we walked past his ex-girlfriend's apartment so she might see us together. He wouldn't pay for anything, and I ended up spending a good chunk of my paycheck on groceries for him because he never had food when I was over. He finally pushed me over the edge when he pulled the whole "I'm not feeling good, you go out without me" card, and I found out he was actually at a party with his ex-girlfriend. His roommate spilled the beans when I called looking for him. I drove to his apartment and ended up writing crazy messages all over his car in bright red lipstick. Things like, "This guy is a lying douche. Hope you got gonorrhea from that or," and "a-hole" on every window. The worst part, even after I went crazy and wrote all over his car, he convinced me to stay with him for another 2 weeks. I finally had a moment of clarity when he completely blew off Valentine's Day saying he forgot and I dumped his ass. Story 17. I'm not a crazy ex. I was a crazy ex. I still am. I'll warn you in advance, the doctors still can't pinpoint exactly what is wrong with me. I have high-functioning autism, really high-functioning. If you met me, you wouldn't suspect anything was wrong. Or maybe you'd think I'm a little socially awkward, but I'm not as socially awkward as Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. I have a high IQ, like him, 140 to be exact. He has what I have, Asperger's syndrome. Well, actually, I have PDD, an extremely mild form of ASD. The doctors have also diagnosed me with mild forms of various alphabet disorders, APD, avoidant personality disorder, BPD, borderline personality disorder, OCD, and so on. My best friend Sana says I'm perfectly normal and that my mom should stop taking me to college interns, calling my doctors quacks. So I've concluded that yes, there's something unusual about me, but I'm not going to excuse my behavior with any one diagnosis. On with the story. I've been depressed for as long as I can remember. Scott once described it perfectly. Happiness is not my emotional resting state. Because I've always been so socially awkward, I managed to get myself ostracized by most of my peers. No one really wanted to be associated with me. When I finally found a group who would accept me, I was the awkward, silent girl in the back, the one who followed everyone around, but didn't really do anything. My silence made people uncomfortable. They thought I was psychotic or crazy. My therapist, who treats me for major depression, once defined insanity as vehemently insisting something is or is not real with no possible evidence to prove it. By that definition, I am not crazy because I've always considered the possibility that my mind could be creating or projecting images. I've questioned whether what I think I've seen is real. Matt accused me of hallucinating, but Falcon had some intense visions when he was getting bullied in school too. And just to be clear, I'm not one of those people who believes they've never seen a car or claims they talked to the president yesterday. What I've seen are demons, 3 to be exact. And again, I fully accept that this is probably just my mind playing tricks on me. They're not terrifying or devil-like. They're odd combinations of animals that appear and disappear, never to be seen again. And I don't mean anything cartoonish like Discord from My Little Pony. Friendship is magic. One of them had the body of a lion with the neck and head of a vulture. No one has ever believed me about these demons I've seen, except him. Can you imagine the joy, the relief, that indescribable feeling when maybe, just maybe, someone finally believes you? It wasn't only that. He said he had seen them too. I guess that should have been my first warning sign, but still. He was a bit of an outcast himself, awkward, with a difficult home life. I understood that. I'm Asian, and my home life is its own kind of hell. We had a lot in common. I felt like I had finally found someone who was exactly like me. Or really, he had found me. Later, I learned he had been running back to his friends and telling them about this crazy girl he had met. He never saw anything. He was just using me for laughs, hoping to gain popularity with his group. At first I was angry and then I was sad. I tried to apologize. I tried to talk to him. I wanted to explain that I wasn't crazy, that I knew what I saw was probably not real, but he wouldn't listen. He insisted I was insane and told his friends that I was obsessed with him. In a way, I guess I am. We have not had contact in 6 months now, and I still feel like I love him. What is love? I cannot stop thinking about him. I have one picture of him saved on my cell phone, and every time I look at it, I wonder how someone could possibly be so beautiful. It hurts that he lied to me. But what hurts the most is the silence that followed our turn of events. If you are out there reading this right now, please know, I am not mad anymore. I am not sad. I love you, but you do not need to be afraid. I just want to be friends, and I will not show it. I am so afraid of losing you. I miss talking to someone who understood what it was like to have an overprotective, paranoid, crazy mother. I miss talking about video games and the latest mythology of vampires. If you could just be my friend, I promise not to mess up. Yes, I am crazy for still loving someone who hurt me so badly, but for someone who has been alone all their life, surrounded by people, yet always alone, to find someone like them, even if they only pretended. How could you not love them? I am crazy. Am I crazy? You decide. Story 18. I imagine I was an ex's crazy ex, but here's my side of the story. We did tons of stuff together. He was really sweet and would insist on taking the bus with me back to my home to make sure I got there safely. We spent so much time together that my friends, one of whom would later give me advice, complained that they never saw him. I did encourage him to spend time with his friends. I wasn't trying to monopolize his time. Then, one day, I suddenly couldn't get a hold of him. We were young, so each of us lived with our respective parents. His mom was an older European immigrant whose English was very poor. She hadn't liked me from the beginning. His dad did. So when she answered and said, "Name not here. Call back at 8 o'clock. I was convinced she was lying and had some ulterior motive. I did call back at 8 o'clock, but she yelled at me to call tomorrow, claiming he was using the bathroom, taking a bath or shower in bed or something like that. This went on for a while, and I even complained to friends because I had no idea what was happening. Was he not getting the message from his mom? Was anyone else able to reach him? My friend said, "Maybe stop calling so much." I was confused. How could not calling help me reach him? It turns out he had decided he'd had enough of the relationship and was hiding behind his mom. Hence the excuses. He had even gone so far as to tell my friend why, which is why she gave me that particular advice. The thing is, if he had just been honest and talked to me about it, even though it would have been upsetting, I would have stopped calling, and things could have ended without all that confusion. Story 19. I'm in crazy ex mode as we speak. The feelings of hurt and anger are so intense and overwhelming that, at times, it doesn't feel like you can control yourself. For instance, last night I waited at my ex's house for hours to see if he had actually broken up with the woman he left me for. He wouldn't return my calls or texts, and I was trapped in the living nightmare that she had talked him out of it, and they were together through the night. It's impossible to sleep with thoughts like that swirling in your head, so in my extremely tired, stressed out, hurt, self-destructive state, I took it as a personal insult and left in the middle of the night to go wait for him. Even before I decided to do it, I thought, this is crazy. But in the moment, it didn't matter. I had to have a response. As a side note, my resting pulse was 120 for a good 3 hours straight. My fight-or-flight instincts were fully activated, and the brain chemicals involved are not conducive to sane thought patterns. Even when the relationship isn't worth saving and it's for the best, it still feels like if you fight hard enough, the other person will realize how much you care and give you another chance. The feeling of loss is the root of all crazy ex behavior. Story 20. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, aside from genuinely mentally ill cases, being a crazy ex is usually just the result of trying to process the wild and varied emotions that the breakdown of a relationship can cause. The perceived craziness is compounded by the fact that the dumper, by the time the breakup occurs, has had an indeterminate amount of time to mull over their feelings and rationalize in their own head that ending things is the right decision. The dumpee has no such luxury. What's more, if the dumper struggles with empathy, has poor social skills, or simply expects their partner to be psychic, they'll assume the dumpy felt exactly the same way and came to the same conclusion. To touch briefly on my own experience, when my ex broke up with me by phone, she said, "You knew this was coming?" No, I didn't. Craziness is normal because emotions are normal. All things being equal, once a crazy ex has had time to come to terms with the relationship's end, they can stop pining for what's gone and start enjoying someone who is smarter, more attractive, and more interesting than their ex ever was. The final step is optional but highly recommended. Trust me. Story 21. I think I was a crazy ex. My ex of almost 2 years broke up with me last fall because he suddenly realized he was gay. I went absolutely crazy. I told him I was cutting him out of my life, mailed him all the pictures I had of us, made him give me back the birthday present I had just bought him, and deleted him from my phone, Facebook, and everything else. Obviously, all of that was just to get at him. I lasted a week before I started texting again, then a little more, until I was begging him to see me. I wrote him letters, called him crying, and found his new boyfriend on OkCupid and Twitter, relentlessly stalking him while crying at every picture of them together. We got a drink one night, and I threw a temper tantrum in the bar. I went on a disgusting number of first dates and publicly flaunted all of it, all while being very nasty to my ex whenever he mentioned his boyfriend. I even tried to hook up with his best friend as revenge. It was terrible. I'm sure he told people I was being crazy, but let's be realistic. It's not every day that the man you think you're going to marry drops the bomb that he likes sausages. My self-esteem was pretty shattered, but I cleaned up my act, and now my gay ex and I are slowly starting to build a friendship. On the flip side, I once had a guy I dumped burn all the stuff I had left at his house in a bonfire, so I guess it could have been much, much crazier. Story 22. I was a very overly attached boyfriend back in high school. I've never hurt anyone physically, but I did have issues with people leaving me or not liking me. And yeah, I essentially stalked a couple of people. Growing up in a single-parent household as a boy living with my mom was pretty hard. In fact, I had never seen a stable or healthy relationship in my life. People on my mom's side either never married or were horribly abused by their partner. My mom was one of them, and I witnessed it. I swore at a young age that I would be different, so what I did was watch and obsess over romantic films. I literally thought that everything I saw on TV about happy relationships was right, and I had no one around to tell me otherwise. I did some of the creepiest things to get a girl's attention because in TV and films they were considered romantic. Think of any. And I probably did them. Fast forward to my first year in college, I began dating one of my oldest friends after a long absence. Yep, I finally got out of the friend zone. I really liked her, and at one point loved her, so you can imagine I became very smothering. I never hurt her mentally or physically, but I built up our relationship to an unrealistic level in my head, which freaked her out. We ended things, and I was depressed. But then she did something no one had ever done for me. She taught me how to be a stable person in relationships. She was honest about why I freaked people out and opened my eyes to how much nonsense I was absorbing from the media. After it ended with her, I began reflecting on my past actions and even developed a little PTSD. I had sabotaged a lot of relationships because I felt like I didn't deserve anyone. Eventually, I woke up and realized I am a nice guy who does deserve someone. I stopped putting women on pedestals and just focused on living my life. I began to understand the difference between infatuation and love, physical attraction and true attraction. In short, I became a rational-minded person. I laugh at a lot of the overly attached girlfriend-boyfriend stories from past posts, but at the same time, I feel for those people we like to call crazy. Yeah, a little. Not all of us were taught how to love correctly. This is no excuse. I take full responsibility for my past, but there is always a sad story behind the crazy. Story 23. To this day, I still don't know if I was the crazy one, though I seriously doubt it. A relationship with a girl I had known for a long time ended around Halloween a few years ago, at possibly the worst time in my life. I was under intense stress from a combination of coaching, work, and trying to get 2 research papers published, all while dealing with family issues and my dad's health, things she never knew about. Throughout the entire relationship, I never felt like the focus. I worked at it, tried to make it better, but to me, she never seemed to realize that she had to put in effort too. Instead, every time we were together, she would talk about every other guy she could think of, her best friend she used to have feelings for, who still had feelings for her, her other best friend, whom she had once been attracted to, though she said, I had nothing to worry about, which becomes important later, and her abusive ex-boyfriend, about whom she insisted on going into detail about their intimate life, but never about me. There was no discussion about us. Yet because of my situation, I just wanted something to hold on to, something that could stay the same and let me release a little of what I was holding in, so I wouldn't lose it somewhere public. Instead, she butchered my psyche for 6 months, constantly bringing her guy friends around and leaving us with absolutely no time alone. She would prod and provoke me at every possible chance until the first time she pushed me over the edge and I put my hand through a wooden door out of frustration. And then she got angry at me for it. At the time, it seemed like the only thing to do, so I didn't go off on her. And yet, even after she realized she had pushed me that far with her BS, it continued. But I was a fool and couldn't reason it. Instead, she pushed more and more, somehow shifting the blame for the failure of the relationship onto me, and then crushed my heart over the phone 3 minutes after I left her house, while I was driving home, while I had plans with friends that night. I snapped, broke down. Every bit of stress and emotion I had kept inside just erupted because of her, but she never knew. I knew she was dealing with her own crap, and I didn't want to dump my stuff on her too. Yet she never seriously asked what was bothering me. She always insisted I was being ridiculous, that I was too neurotic, assuring me that we were okay, except when she crushed me. 2 months later, she's engaged to the other best friend I supposedly had nothing to worry about, and she bailed to Arizona after making the I need you in my life as a friend argument, which I agreed to with no intention of following through and never did a damn bit of the work to do so. But it's all good. I got my things in order. I got a great job. I graduated. Meanwhile, she's working 3 to 5 jobs at a time just to make ends meet in Arizona with her fiancé, who refused to work more than 3 hours on weekends while getting his degree to be a motorcycle technician. I'm doing fine now, Bish. Thanks for the push. Story 24, yeah, I was about 18. I'd had a few boyfriends in high school, but nothing long-term. He was around a decade older than me, and he was the first guy I ever really felt strongly about. He eventually broke up with me because of the age difference. Or at least that was the explanation he gave. We kept sleeping together and hanging out all the time for a couple of months afterward, and nothing really felt different. But once he actually started to pull away, I went crazy. I would send him long Facebook messages, text him too much, and basically refuse to accept that our relationship had changed. Sometimes he would give in and sleep with me again, and after every time I'd convince myself we were getting back together, and then unleash another wave of desperation. I would call him during emotional breakdowns, threaten self-harm, and do whatever I could to get his attention. I had convinced myself he was the only man who would ever care about me, that he was my last hope somehow. At 18, which feels ridiculous now, all of my self-esteem and self-worth became tied to his approval. I had also dealt with SA in my life, and I think I ended up transferring all my anger and unresolved emotion onto him. Because when I called and yelled and screamed, he never really reacted. He wouldn't hang up or fight back. He just absorbed it. I used to think I was the only person who felt sorry for the crazy ex in these stories. They're usually unhappy with themselves and their lives, and in my experience, they've often dealt with abuse or abandonment long before the relationship even started. Story 25. I wasn't crazy. I was worse. To the crazy girls out there, I'll let you in on a secret. Sometimes we made you crazy, and we know it. I think the theme of this thread is that there are always 2 sides to the story, and even that isn't enough. Sometimes there's a villain, and that villain almost never gets labeled as crazy when the dust settles. It started when I was in a long-term relationship. We'd even lived together for 3 years, and in my mind, we were building a life. Then, slowly, she, let's call her L, began to fall out of love with me. But it wasn't just me. She was falling out of love with the relationship as a whole. Maybe 23 is too young to plan your life, or maybe it was bound to end. Either way, the relationship came apart and she moved out. It sucked. A lot. Within a month, I met a new girl. Let's call her Y. Suddenly, I could be in a relationship again. I dove in head first, transferring all the feelings I still had for my previous girlfriend onto the new one. Within a month, I had told her I loved her, and she said she loved me back. Before long, the lease on the apartment I had shared with my old girlfriend was up, and it was time for me to move. I was happily looking for one-bedroom apartments when the new girlfriend suggested we move in together. In a single moment, I knew what I had done. It hit me like 100 punches to the stomach. Like a complete and total a-hole, I had led this girl on. I had used her in the worst possible way. When a friend asked how things were going with Y, I said, "She asked me to move in with her," to which my friend replied, "She's crazy, dude. You've got to dump her." I didn't correct him. It's not easy to tell a story when you're the total a-hole. The honorable thing to do would have been to break up with her immediately, but remember, I'm the villain in this story. I thought I could slow things down. For some reason, I believed that if I could dial the relationship back to zero, we could start over and really give it a solid try. From her perspective, I probably just woke up one day and stopped loving her. As soon as she wants to move in, I need my space. Wasn't that I had stopped loving Y. It was that I had never really loved her. I had only tried to use her to replace L. Of course, this wasn't what I set out to do, but it's what I did. After a few weeks of failing to slow things down, I realized I really needed to break up with this girl. I took her to her favorite restaurant and ended things. Even as I write this, I can't believe I thought that was a good idea. In my head, I thought, I hate to break up with her, but perhaps a free meal at her favorite restaurant will soften the blow. She went nuts. Some of what happened I only found out months later, but she stopped bathing regularly, stopped hanging out with her friends, and even had huge meltdowns with her 2 childhood best friends, separately. I don't know exactly what happened in those blowouts, but she hasn't spoken to either friend since. She even told people a family member who was perfectly healthy had cancer. She's fine now. I don't talk to her, mostly because I feel kind of guilty, but I've heard from mutual friends that she's happy again. I've seen her a few times and she looks better. She doesn't look like someone who hates the world anymore. I've never told the story this way before. It's probably not the only time I've been the villain, but it's the only time I know I was the villain for sure. Story 26. Yes, I was crazy. In college, I finally reached a point where I could confront my parents about the abuse and psychological damage they had caused me. I had always been very anti-commitment because I believed I was too damaged for a long-term relationship. I met this boyfriend right before the semester when I was fairly certain that confronting my parents wouldn't force me to quit college. I guess because of that sense of safety, I began having horrific nightmares about the past abuse on a weekly basis. The nightmares were keeping me awake, and I wasn't very rational. I would have obsessive thoughts about death and would cry if I was left alone. I would spiral for hours trying to understand why those things happened to me. Why my parents never realized or acknowledged what they did when I was young. If they called, it would disturb me for hours. I tried seeing several psychologists, but I couldn't put into words what was happening. I had always remembered everything, so it wasn't shock. I had known my whole life was messed up, so I didn't understand why things were suddenly hitting me this hard. I didn't figure it out until much later, but I was basically having a PTSD reaction. Why it waited my entire life to show up, I'm still not sure. Anyway, because of all this, I wanted constant distraction. I wanted to do homework around other people so I wouldn't get lost in my own thoughts. I wanted to sleep near someone so that when I had a nightmare, I could hold it together and fall back asleep. I wanted any excuse to get off the phone with my parents quickly. I'm busy. I'm with someone. Anything. So I ended up with this strange mix of clingy yet distant behavior. I was upset all the time with no way to explain why. Eventually, and understandably, I got dumped. I got drunk and called my parents and had a screaming meltdown. I have never been that drunk before or since. In conclusion, I apologize to you, Reddit, instead of to my long-ago boyfriend for my horrific behavior. Maybe he's one of you, and will see this post. Story 27. Every time this topic comes up, I feel this needs to be said. Every ex of a narcissist is labeled crazy. If you have been called a crazy ex, double-check your own situation for gaslighting and emotional abuse or manipulation, which are often marked by excessive hubris on the part of your former partner. Narcissists flip a switch when they are done using you, and they shun you. Relationships are their favorite forum for abuse because cutting others off suddenly and completely is seen as normal and acceptable. Plus, it leaves you wondering what went wrong and feeling foolish. Humiliation and shame are powerful incentives for narcissists. Breakups are normal and happen to everyone. What sets a narcissist apart is how they end things, as their breakups carry a humiliation imperative. It is very important to them to show you that you are utterly and irrevocably inferior and disposable, and their actions are never driven by ordinary anger, grievances, or conflict. If your ex seems crazy to you for anything short of truly extreme and destructive behavior, such as deliberate attempts to control, terrorize, or treat you as an object, then seek professional help. It is completely normal for a person to experience heightened emotions at the end of a relationship, including grief, anger, confusion, or a need for closure. If you view these reactions as crazy, mock your ex for them, or interpret their behavior as threatening, evil, inferior, or stupid, then you are in serious need of professional help. This cannot be overstated enough. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.